Hello everyone. This video is on Uranus and the inherent freedom of now. I'm excited to share this with you. To begin this exploration, I want to start by offering a simple observation that most of the time when we look upon our reality, we are looking upon a story. Simply, I am standing right now in front of a tree. That sounds true. On some level it is true. It's a tree. But we so often get stuck in these ways of thinking where we describe the living, breathing reality of life according to its descriptive qualities. So what actually is a tree? I'm going to put that question to the side for a moment and get right to the core. Uranus represents the intelligence of Source. What is Source? Neptune. And also love. So I want to start with that foundation that the primary reality is love. And when we look into Uranus world, we're looking at the intelligence of love, the way that love moves and is technologically equipped within itself to be functioning as all that is. It's very important in my perspective to understand that the technology of Source, the intelligence of Source, is a manifestation of Source. One of the main issues with Uranus is where we begin to notice this intelligence of life, and we can get lost in the intellect without understanding the source from which all the manifestations arise. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So thinking of Uranus as representing the intelligence of Source, it implies an essential matrix of creation that is exactly what it is. And so, when I call this a tree, what I'm in a sense not connected to is what it actually is, what life actually is, what now actually is. Let's use the example of a flower. I think there's a poem, I forgot who wrote it. It goes something like, a flower is a flower is a flower is a flower. That's a paraphrase. What's the meaning of that poem? You call something what it is, and then we actually stop watching it, we stop observing it, we stop actually forming a relationship to it. When we look at reality as an observer, without these boxes and thoughts that we project upon it, we begin to notice that there's an inherent matrix that is of essence everywhere. So a flower resonates with sacred geometry that's found in all kinds of plants, all kinds of objects all over the world. It resonates with solar systems. It resonates with the transit of Venus. What we find without a story, and this doesn't mean don't be calling a tree, but there's an invitation here to examine the place of observation, to look upon life and say, well, what is it? What is this? What is this? We're doing Uranus and Taurus. So a little later I'll speak about perceiving the body, perceiving our physicality according to what it is, not our projections of what it is. And so when we begin to enter into the observer state, we start to find that everything is truly an expression, a manifestation of the essential essence, intelligence of Source. Which means essentially there are two ways to walk through life. One where we're taking everything literally according to the metaphor that we're placing upon it, or we're understanding the archetypal essence and resonance that it truly pertains to. And there's no person, thought, memory, object, experience that isn't connected to the larger ecosystem of life. So this topic is the inherent freedom of now. there's often this pervading orientation that obscures the reality of now. So now itself is Neptune, because now is the only reality that there is. Now is source, now is foundation, now is love. That's the primary reality. And when we look at Uranus, we're beginning to unravel, how does this now operate? What is its intelligence? And judgments, subjective ideas and notions and projections upon reality don't fit into that. In fact, we find that it's literally just a thought form that we've put onto the entirety of our life. And as we wake up, it's like a veil that's simply lifted. And we become like an entry runner into reality. We begin to notice, oh, there's actual reality. Finding out what actually is. It's like I'm experiencing it as like, oh, there's what is, and it's just the beginning of a journey of realization. So when we speak about the idea of now is inherently freeing, because this moment reflects the inherent ecosystem of all of life. Within Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house, we have the idea of community. What's that about? That everything in creation is symbiotically in relationship to itself. All of the archetypes of astrology, they're there. They're all in relationship with one another. They're all in a geometric resonance with one another. In the same way, every element of creation is in some kind of community with everything else. And when we drop the personal projections onto what reality is, there's this experience of everything falling in its place. That you are where you need to be now, and I am where I need to be. And it's literally like having a good neighbor, a friend. You know, hi, it's good to see you. And everything's settled. In the same way that we have solar systems that are orbiting, you know, in proximity to one another. They might collide every once in a while. There's a dance, there's a rhythm. But everything is what it is. In fact, everything always has been what it is. One of the teachings of Uranus is that there's nothing new. Consider that for a moment. These things are difficult generally for the mind, for the conditioned mind to understand, because it tends to be very conditioned according to time and space thinking. So when I present the idea that there's nothing new in creation, it's hard because, well, you know, the internet didn't exist that till long ago, you know? So what this means is every innovation, every improvement, every technology that's developed is, in a sense, just a more developed understanding of the essential intelligence of creation. It's all a metaphor. So Marshall McLuhan speaks about this idea that every innovation is the content of a prior innovation. You know, typewriter was the innovation of whatever came before typewriters, and then the computer came after. I'm sure there's a bunch of steps in between, and so forth. And so on one level of perspective, this is new, it's an invention, but really it's tuning into an essential archetype. We can say this is the archetype of communication. And every element, the metal, the keys, the fingers that are used, every element of everything that is ever invented, it's clarifying and evolving, refining an understanding of essential creation. Ultimately, what's realized within Uranus is that the entire ecosystem of creation exists within each of us. So our own consciousness is not separate from any technology, any development, any interconnection within the universe. So we can think of the internet, for example, as a metaphor for the web of consciousness that connects everything and everyone, like mycelium spores that are all connected to each other. In fact, the natural organisms of life reflect in a very pure way the nature of consciousness. And again, all of these things that I'm speaking about reflects the consciousness of Creator. And we are that. What's contained within Uranus is the idea of micro and macro. So the consciousness of Creator is contained within the consciousness of the creations. So all of this exists inside of us. Then we ultimately realize that we are also the creators. That's where when we come to an understanding of reality as it actually is, we begin to sort of tread on this new ground of conscious creation. And this, in my understanding, is where we also see things like higher evolved beings from other solar systems usually, but not, there's some here, that can manifest through thought projection. Because this physical reality, which is Saturn, anything that's defined, formed within time and space, is simply the crystallization of consciousness. But time and form and structure is not the primary reality. So everything comes from vibrational essence. As we start to understand that, we refine our thought in resonance with the cosmos. Yogi Bhajan says, vibrate the cosmos. Kundalini Yoga and all these beautiful practices and from different traditions are about helping us realign the body into its natural resonance, micro-macro, with all of creation, with the entire universe. That we are creators in this way. So we look at a tree, we look at a flower, we begin to understand the intelligence of the tree, the intelligence of the flower, and that's the starting point for some really cool possibilities here on this planet, right? Because we have tended to think in terms of conditioning what we know, and thus what's possible, what will never be possible, all these limitations that every generation has, we don't tend to realize the immense potential we have to live in co-creation with all of life, because all of this reflects the intelligence of Creator. And that's an interesting thing about Uranus. In every generation, we have a large population of people. I think Jeffrey Wolf Green called them the social dinosaurs, which basically holds on to this idea that things have to stay the way they are and they can't change, or they shouldn't change, it's bad if they change. And then there's the group of people that are always going to be wanting to break free. They'll feel oppressed or repressed by the status quo. They want to find something more. They want to evolve. They want to innovate it. And yet, what we find in every generation is that consciousness becomes limited according to these agreed upon collective projections. And even if we have a lot of innovation and change, there tends to be I'm not sure if the word is a zeitgeist or a social contagion, we say a collective agreed upon paradigm that we all sign up and into. And when we start to wake up to reality, and this is beyond making innovations. I mean, this can apply to, Tesla or who's pretty awake, or people that are designing really cool technologies, or making amazing movies like The Matrix. Those brothers that made that, they were pretty awake. I don't think they needed that much violence in the movie, in my opinion, but the essence of that, right? But when we really start to wake up to what things actually are, like really seeing, there's a very potent experience of stepping aside. Like, I was here in this world of agreed upon ideas and projections, and now it's like, oh. And so we all experience that on various levels. And Jeffrey Wolf Green speaks that for most souls, the Uranian impulse for liberation happens in a slow release process, because we're all afraid of not belonging. This is a very interesting piece here. Uranus corresponds to the idea of belonging inherently, because it's all community. A good metaphor for that, besides for the solar system and besides for the fact that it's right now in me and you and this is a community, but a tangible one is an ecosystem in a forest. It all belongs. And how does the bird know to make a nest, and how do the bugs know to come into the tree when the tree grows? There's an inherent unity to all these elements coming into play. Belonging and everyone having their place, everyone having their people, their community. There's an inherent truth to that, but it doesn't usually look the way we think it never looks the way we think it should look. Just like no solar system looks like any other solar system. No body looks like any other body. But because of, and this is oftentimes trauma or past lives of excommunication, being cast out, etc., which is common, or persecution for being different. Because of these kinds of pieces, there's a sense of, if I am myself, or if I really step away from these agreed upon projections, I won't belong. I won't have friends. No one will understand me. I will be lonely. People will think I'm strange or weird, whatever that might be. In the breaking away process, the more a soul can realize that the very fears of not belonging, the very fear of exclusion, that it itself isn't an actual reality, meaning the fear is really just the loss of a projection. What happens with Uranus when we come into reality is everything falls into its place. So we speak about the idea of now being inherently free. It's free because everything in creation is exactly what it is. Nothing's wrong. Everything has its place. And thus there's this sense of synchronicity and resonance and pleasant surprise that happens more and more with Uranus. And this is trippy. The best way for me to speak about this is again remembering that time isn't the primary reality. And so, according to conditioned consciousness, we often think that everything's happening in time, and there's a logic and there's a sequence to events that we can understand. But here's a metaphor. You're 12 years old, you have a dream where this great sage comes to you and says, when you're 33, you're going to meet a woman on the street. She's going to give you a flower. You're going to smell that flower and remember who you are. And lo and behold, you're walking down the road, you're 33, and a woman gives you a flower, and everything happens just as you were told. Or, let's maybe say that that message was a bunch of symbols and archetypes, right? So a lot of times, creation isn't speaking literally. When we talk about a woman, it doesn't mean a woman. When we talk about a flower, it doesn't necessarily mean a flower. These are essences that reflect the intelligence of life. So it might be a metaphor for essence, and it might come forth in a different way. But what I'm wanting to present here is that there is a seeming glitch in the timeline of reality as we tend to think of it, when suddenly a unicorn comes up and says, come ride on me, we're going. And it doesn't make sense, it seems non sequitur. And yet if we understand that the identity that we're playing out is just a projection, beyond that there's reality as it is. It's like the planted essential framework of reality has always existed. I've often given the analogy of a video game. I think it's a really good analogy for understanding Uranus. The program for the video game already exists. All the levels, all the boards. From the perspective of Mario or Luigi, there's a perceived unfolding within time. If Mario wakes up to reality while he's playing the game, it doesn't mean there isn't any more karma. Karma relates to time. So as we unfold karma, there is a time-based process, and yet consciousness can be awake to itself, to reality, while karma is still unfolding. So he might be going through the boards, but aware of essential reality. And thus there's a sense of, I'm just playing out the journey. I'm exactly where I need to be, who I need to be. I am what I am. And so he'll eat the mushrooms, bomb on the bad guys, and go through chimneys or whatever Mario does. And he might know, yes, and in 3 years, within time and the planned unfolding of my karma, I'm going to arrive at level 10 and, fight this monster. What I find is, relative to the conditioned consciousness of guilt, shame, and separation, the reality of all that is becomes blocked to us. It's like we can't take it. There's a veil there. And I'm noticing more and more that what is past and what is future actually becomes available, because it already is. Now, this is very different than a memory of the past. When we have a memory of something, that's actually Mercury. Short-term memory, meaning the details that we can recall that are locally organized in our mind, like 2 seconds ago I picked up tea and it looked like this. I'm locating specific aspects, but Uranus is 360 degrees, right? It's not specifying a particular facet and a detail and categorizing jar, hand, picking up. Those are very limited descriptive words. But Uranus is seeing beyond the descriptive qualities of something. It's seeing what it is. It's prior to the linear mind. And so when we awaken to clear seeing, the past becomes available as it is. And that can be confusing, because we might have dreams or memories or even sensations that pertain to whatever archetype is freeing up right now within us. And it might not make a lot of sense, and it actually might be very traumatic. Very often in the awakening process, emotions, memories, all kinds of things begin to manifest. And it creates suffering or paranoia or fear or anxiety when we start to hold on to it with the mind. When we remain an observer, it literally just allows reality to become clear. Again, it's like the veils, the clouds kind of clearing away, and we see everything for what it is. And what's revealed was, oh, I believed something when that happened, and that set into form a trauma relative to how I projected thought onto the event. Her walking out on me wasn't traumatic, my thoughts about it were. And so oftentimes we'll even recreate traumas and experiences in our life from early on, before the soul even has an awareness of being an identity. And it's all reflecting where the soul is creating the same resonances that are yet unresolved, where there's an opportunity for liberation. Until we are observing things for what it is, there's a tendency for life to recreate the same traumatic experiences. Yet when we realize the trauma is in our thoughts about it, everything shifts. And then it's almost like there might have been like this entanglement and this enmeshment, and it's like, oh wait, you just kind of stop engaging it with the mind, and then what was kind of a war or a battle, it just sort of falls into place. The best analogy I can offer for this is like two people that have come in together, life after life after life, coming together, dealing with abandonment, betrayal, all these core karmic pieces. And suddenly there can be this moment where everything's seen for what it is. That it's not actually true, you caused this, you did this, I did this. That it's all just something that's being believed, a story that's being projected. What happens is everyone just falls into their place. Then it's like, oh, hi neighbor, pika pika, pika pika. And that's a beautiful piece about Uranus is resonance and harmony in an ecosystem. Everything is resonance and harmony and resonance is the foundation of creation. So we get to sing and dance and play with each other and share resonance with one another in a natural way. It's like we don't have to try to force it, because what you are, like literally what you are, look at your body, look at your mind, look at your consciousness, your own personality, these aspects of your being, they're all pointing to the essential intelligence of creation as it manifests as you, which is an expression of the source. Your expression harmonizes naturally. It doesn't have to affect anything. It doesn't have to try anything with me, with everyone else. Just like Taurus resonates with Aquarius in just the right way, right? Everything naturally is what it is. And so we've heard the term, your vibe attracts your tribe. That couldn't be more true. It's simply a fact of creation. That vibe is the glue from which everything is coming together and already is what it is. So we will have, relative to the need for belonging, a lot of souls that will then say, okay, I'm going to be a part of this group or this culture because I'm accepted. And so there's an element of conformity. Wherever we have Uranus is where there will be conformity, and often linked to a fear or trauma of being excluded, or where we are excluding or persecuting others. Either side of the coin. And yet whenever a group, which originally comes together through natural resonance, which is sort of beyond thought, it's unintentional, like being in a nursery with other kids. It's sort of like before all these social constructs were learned, you know, little Susan will just walk over to Joe and like share toys. There's no thinking about it. There aren't all these ideas of like age, gender, color, whatever. All these things that or like sexual stuff and how he looked at me, what do I want from him? It's like this natural sense of sharing. Uranus represents, and Jeffrey Wolf Green says this, giving, sharing, and including. That's what it's all about. Because that's what the universe is. That's what a forest is. That's what the stars are. And that's what we are when we allow it. And so we don't have to fear being alone. We don't have to fear or worry at all about not having our people. It is a joy to realize that we have our people, we have our community. It might be different for everyone. And also remember, there's karma. So a part of this journey is playing out the story. It's beautiful and fascinating and fun to just appreciate this more absolute reality while having respect for the conditional at the same time. Okay, so speaking about the future, you can also understand and see the future. And again, it's oftentimes when the future is perceived, it will happen through a filter of subjective content, like almost like wearing, there's a teaching in the Talmud called aspacleria. It's described that the rabbis, the prophets, the Nevi'im, the word for prophet in Hebrew is Navi, that the prophets who would get Nevuah, prophecy, they had aspacleria she'eina me'ira. Aspacleria is a translucent looking glass. She'eino me'ira, that isn't clear, meaning it's tinted. And the Talmud sages said that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moses, in their view, was the only prophet that had aspacleria me'ira, like clear looking glass. And what's that idea? It's the light of source, Ein Sof, infinity, manifesting to individuated consciousness, which itself is just a reflection of that source, perceiving that source. And so we can experience aspacleria she'eino me'ira, most of us do, in various ways. Premonitions, dreams, visions, whatever. The trick and the thing people most fall into, the mistake people will fall into is they'll take it literally. And this is where we have to understand that the direct seeing of Uranus doesn't include interpretation. Again, it's 360-degree sight, vision, sensory experience prior to the right and left brains picking it up. Uranus is higher mind. It's not right or left brain even. Jupiter's right brain, intuition. And so we use a Jupiter function to interpret the seemingly random and impersonal impulses coming from reality. And then Mercury will organize it, give it context, talk about it, give it names, whatever. And so we'll say, oh, I had a dream about, a big rainbow in the sky and elephants falling, and it said 2032. And I think in the year 2032, there's a prophecy now that elephants are going to fall from rainbows in the sky. And we need to use a Jupiter function to understand that the essential intelligence of creation isn't operating and speaking to us literally according to our time-based thinking. So when it is offering the idea of tree, flower, rainbow, it's not literally tree, flower, rainbow. It's reflecting an essence. So we develop our understanding of reality through Jupiter. And that's important because basically with Jupiter, we're expanding our understanding to encompass appreciation for truth, which is love, which is Neptune. Without that, we can have genius. We can have people that have really profound seeing. But if there isn't an understanding of love, if there isn't an intuition about what this is all about, then it's very easy to get stuck in paranoia, conspiracy theories, fear-based thinking, and all kinds of separation, like us versus them kind of things. Uranus, in its essence, represents the blueprint, what we actually are, the essential nature of who we are. And I like to use the analogy of a dinosaur sponge. You put the dinosaur sponge in a water, but it's like a square, and then it becomes a dinosaur. When we resolve these projections, we begin to actually uncover that we are created from the source exactly as we are and always have been. And that brings the idea that there's a difference between personality and individuality. The soul has its own individuality. And the individuality doesn't evolve, doesn't change. It's essential archetype. Things like elements, for example, the archetype of earth, its essence, right? Or archetype of water. Also, helium, oxygen, right? These are all essential elements, in a way, of creation. And they can form together and create different kinds of communities and networks. In the same way, each soul in the macro micro is its own essence, its own element, in a way. And thus we are also resonating with these other elements. So we have maybe some jaguar in us, some owl in us, some snake in us. And that brings in the idea of how each soul is inherently resonant with nature in its own way, according to its own inherent nature. So lastly, I just want to offer this perspective. Uranus in Aquarius is one of those things where there are all these different associations and people oftentimes get really confused. So hopefully this talk helped to bring some of them together. I want to offer one observation. Why is it that 11th house Uranus Aquarius type people are into astrology? And why is it that these people are also really into community as well? Are you starting to see the linkage, how it's all connected? What astrology presents for us is a view of the interconnectedness and the web of everything. It allows for an objective seeing of how everything is in resonance and synchronicity with itself. And community is no different than that. The stars in their orbits are no different than people coming together in their orbits. It reflects a natural occurrence within creation. So there's an inherent attuned, people that are attuned to community and bringing people together or resonating with a consciousness of giving and including are often very good astrologers too.